My name's Dan Osper, mental health advocate and documentarian. I feel like I've done some pretty special things over the last 10 years. But as well as helping people tell their stories and skateboarding across most of America for a good cause, I worked in the liquor retail industry for 3 decades and saw a lot of changes. And in all my years as the guy at the bottle-o, nothing caught my attention, and everybody else's for that matter, like the rise of craft beer. In this 12-part series, I take a 4-year look at how the industry has become what it is today.
You know how I told you we were growing? I wasn't kidding.
And meet the brewers that make my little part of the world a recognisable craft beer mecca. I'll take you along for the ride as we see firsthand the growth of some of Australia's biggest and coolest brands. From science and agriculture to natural disasters and a global pandemic. You'll see exclusive footage and interviews as the best known names in Australian craft beer give me the inside story of the industry that has everyone talking.
It's head down, bum up, or working on making great beer.
And if you know me, then you know that along the way, we'll have a bit of a laugh. From the people who have laid the foundations, to those who like to set new standards. From the professionals to the blokes that still like to tinker around in the shed. Beer lovers of the world, this is Brewed in Queensland. Ah, beer. It's no secret that Australians love it, and that we've gained a worldwide reputation for our consumption of it. Compared to the rest of the world, however, Australian beer drinkers were practically held hostage by a small group of producers with only a handful of beers to choose from in each state for the best part of 100 years. Where other countries have thrived on variety, Australian taste buds have been cornered by conglomerates and a short lineup of mainstream products. But that definitely didn't stop us from drinking a lot of it. And I think we all know what the late Prime Minister Bob Hawke meant when he said,
I tell you what, any boss who sacks anyone for not turning up to die is a bum.
Things have changed dramatically in the beverage industry though, and despite our long-standing pub culture, over the last 10 years, Australians officially made the move towards quality over quantity, albeit with a bit of reluctance.
With 30 years experience in liquor retail, I can honestly say nothing left an impression on me like the explosion of the craft beer industry. Over the last 10 years in particular, pale ale, IPA and sours have become the hot topic on the lips of Australian beer drinkers. But the success of the industry didn't come easily. Along with the challenges of small businesses taking on the big players in the beverage game, night after night, filling fridges just like this one, I experienced a lot of dismissive attitudes towards the new wave of brews taking Australia by storm. And I lost count of the amount of times I heard somebody say, there's too many to choose from. And that may be understandable with the amount of beers that have become available to us in this day and age, but it raises a simple question. If there's so many to choose from, where did they all come from? Or more importantly, who brewed them all? Hey mate, you got a box?
It may have been a bit too much to ask to answer that exact question. By 2019, there were over 300 breweries in Australia, and 90 of them were in my home state of Queensland. But that did mean, as a resident of the Gold Coast, I was definitely in the right spot to start asking questions about how the industry became so big, and perhaps where all that growth might come to a halt. Surfers Paradise might be best known for its sun, surf and lifesavers, but the surrounding suburbs have become home to some of the most recognisable craft beer brands Australia has ever enjoyed. So, where to begin? First things first, I needed to get the story from the ground up, and for that, I needed to visit two blokes who had been in the game since before craft beer was even called craft beer.
John, better show me around, mate.
My name's Gary Land. I'm one of the co-founders of the Laughing Lizard microbrewery.
And I'm John Land, his brother, co-founded it with him.
We grew up in Madocke, and after we got married, we both live in Sunnybank, in different houses, of course.
On my first visit to the Laughing Lizard, I was in luck and caught them on a quiet day's trade. And John was happy to let me know.
But you see, it's not real busy today. You're lucky. I mean, normally on a Friday, it's just flat out all day.
And so, it was time to break the ice with one all-important question. What was your first beer?
Probably a 4X bitter, I would say.
Mine would have been a 4X Gold.
Brothers John and Gary Land had developed a successful business based largely on a keg swapping program for customers with personal tapped fridges at home.
13 years ago, we made our first beer, yeah. We've been doing home brew, but we actually went to a brewery and made our own beer, and then just continued on. I'm a cabinet maker, had my own cabinet making business for 25 years.
I was a motor mechanic for about 15 years, and then I was building lifts for Otis Elevators for another 13 years after that.
Quite a little spot,
It is, yeah.
and a lot of people don't know about it.
No, we see.
Yeah.
I actually had my 40th birthday and we hired a keg of beer from a place similar to this in Brisbane. Everyone said, geez, it's really good beer, where did you get that from? As it was, I made it myself at the brewery and it all started from there. We actually opened this place about a year later and we've just grown year to year from there.
We've got one lady permanent. Another younger lady is casual, a couple of days a week. And John's son comes in on Saturday mornings as a casual. We've got about 600 regulars that come in, sort of weekly or every 2 weeks or whatever. On our database, we've got over 4,000 on our database. A lot of them are customers for spirit supplies and homebrew supplies.
4 degrees in here.
I can feel it.
Yeah.
It's definitely about 4 degrees.
So it sits here for 4 days minimum. Then we can filter it, carbonate it, it's ready to bottle or keg.
You've got a lot of stuff in here.
Yeah, we keep about probably about 5,000-6,000 litres in here at any one time.
So it's a good trade.
It is, yeah. We produce about 10,000 litres a month. And that's all to the public. We've got a couple of commercial outlets, but mainly for the public.
All these years.
Yes.
The first 12 months we didn't take a wage, but we paid all our bills. It took 2 years before we started taking a wage and getting the product out there, getting people knowing about it. A lot of walking the streets, knocking on doors, newspaper advertising, magazine advertising. But eventually you reach a mark where you've got enough customers that word of mouth then takes over. And now social media just sends everything berserk. So.
We've got a 3-stage filter system here, down to 0.5 microns, so there's all the major breweries do the beers to.
Yep.
From there it goes into a carbonating keg. We carbonate the beer, and it's drinkable down in there. Most of my customers are in kegs, so we just fill their kegs, we take it home and have a good time.
That's pretty simple, straightforward
Very simple,
process.
yeah.
But that simple, straightforward process seemed to be keeping John and Gary pretty occupied.
So these are all customer kegs here, so they're just waiting for a beer to come through.
So pretty much all of these are spoken for.
All these kegs are not customers.
And for rotation.
They come in whenever they're ready. So yeah, we start from the extract. We do 11,500 litres a month out the door. So it keeps us quite busy. I think it gives people a choice of beers. In the back when I was in my 20s, you had Carlton, 4X, West End from Adelaide. There wasn't a lot of choice in beers. There was no Gold or anything else. And you grew up, you were a 4X drinker or you were a Carlton drinker. There was nothing in between. Nowadays, with all the choices of beers, and people are used to trying something different, and so they're willing to give it a go.
Yeah, well, back 13 years ago, the craft brewing industry really was very small. It was basically at the start of it. Especially in the last 5 years, it's really grown. There's just so many more craft beers out there now.
We were originally, people thought of us as a home brew place. They thought we were making home brew. They didn't understand the word craft beer, and actually we didn't call it craft beer ourselves. And our biggest problem was people would come in and use the word home brew, and we were trying to get that out of their heads. So we don't make home brew, we are an actual brewery. That's why we changed our name after 5 years from the Brewers Club, which is our business name, to our trading name, which is the Laughing Lizard, which made results straight away. Yeah, it made people think that we were a brewery then, not a homebrew club.
Mexicana, which is still, from day one, still our most popular beer.
Like a Corona.
Like a Corona.
Except better. We just invented a new one about a month ago we call Lizard Island. It's an IPA, it's a darker beer. It's gone berserk, really. So what do you think of that one, Dan?
It's good, mate. It's good.
Okay, we invented that one about a month ago. It was, we found an old recipe called Paradise in a Glass. And so we had a look at it and then we changed it around to suit ourselves and came up with that. And we call it Lizard Island.
Lizard Island.
Yeah. So we put it out on trial about a month ago, and since then we've probably done the equivalent of 50 cartons of it in the first month. Yeah, people are really enjoying it.
Found a taste for it?
Yep.
I can find a taste for it, mate.
Yeah. 5.9%. It's up there and puts you in a party mood.
You better be careful then.
You better.
While we were on the subject of native fauna, it reminded me about an integral chapter in Australia's craft beer history. A chapter that I was pretty sure John and Gary would remember nostalgically.
It had, what's the name of a frog? Toad, cane toad, yeah. I never went there, but I remember of it, yeah. It was a long time ago.
For many Australians, when they think of the Gold Coast, they may well think of Sanctuary Cove, home of Australia's biggest boat show, two of Queensland's most prestigious golf courses and the luxury gated estates to go with them. But what they may not remember is that this was once the site of the Gold Coast's first craft brewery. Sanctuary Cove Brewing, which finished trading as Masthead Brewery, was the home of the infamous Canto beer and the equally infamous Canto Racing. Now it's a land and sales office, and not a single remnant of the brewery remains. But what finished here led to one of Australia's biggest current brands.
To keep things fair and get the best backstory behind our national craft beer explosion, I had to sneak across the border and visit one of Australia's most illustrious little towns.
I have been here, this place before. Same old dream, same old show.
It was here in New South Wales and the world-famous Byron Bay I would meet the founders of a brand so successful it would place them in craft beer chronicles.
It was around 10 years ago at this bar at the Beach Hotel in Byron Bay. A friend recommended to me a drink that was set to change the way Australians looked at craft beer forever. No sooner had it become available to the general public, it was as rare as hen's teeth, and a slew of other brewers followed on with its style. I am, of course, talking about Stone & Wood Pacific Ale.
So who were the people behind this iconic beer and equally iconic brand?
Born and bred in Brisbane, southeast Queensland. I guess through my teenage years I was into sport and music. I was a bit of a musician, bass guitar.
Stone and Wood founder Jamie Cook is a member of what might be Australia's most famous craft beer trio. Along with business partners Brad Rogers and Ross Jurasic, the three built a brand which became completely synonymous within the industry.
Yes. Yeah, it would have been a stubby at barbed wire 4X.
On my first visit to the purpose-built Byron Bay facility, Jamie began telling me the story behind the brand while giving me the grand tour.
I was working in the UK actually in the refrigeration game, and they had a hot summer and most of the refrigeration gear in London shit itself. So I was a very busy man for a week or two while it got over 20 degrees, and I thought there's got to be a better way to make a buck than this in London. So I joined a business who was running pubs and got into working behind the bar. Did a bit of a course with a brewery in London, how to look after cask ale, and that sort of got me intrigued in the whole brewing process and what beer's all about.
Mate, this place is magnificent.
We had the dream of building this at some stage in the evolution of the business, and it took us a long time to actually be able to afford it. But yeah, I think it's a great facility that the vision of this place was about putting the admin team, some of our brewing team and our visitors together in the one space so that they coexist. And they can hear the bubble of noise, which we can hear now in the background of visitors here enjoying our beer as well. So those three things working together is really what the magic of this place is.
And it's a hive of activity up there. It looks like, I don't know, Google.
I do remember the first beer I ever tried. It was in the Brisbane Botanical Gardens. I may have just been of age, maybe. You know, in the late 80s, there wasn't too many choices for too many beers as there is now. So pretty much it was hot 4X long neck. But yeah, always loved music as well, and yeah, loved, funnily enough, looking at what's going on in the beer industry now, but always loved independent music. Yeah, and still do today. Went to school through Brisbane, primary school, high school, a couple of university courses, and then went off to work in quite a few pubs in Brisbane. Really got a love affair with all things beer. Wanted to go off and study brewing. No real opportunities to do that in Brisbane back in the mid-90s. Went off to Adelaide, studied winemaking, the enology course out at Adelaide University. Yeah, so brewing and craft brewing's always been in the blood from a very, very early age, probably 17 or 18. I've been making home brew at different qualities, different scales, but right through Brisbane, you know, it was something that we just wanted to play and experiment with. Went down to Adelaide, had to survive and loved to drink the odd beer or two, so we made our own beer as an amateur brewer down there. Geez, remember that? That was the late 80s, early 90s. Had some great fun, you know, blew up quite a few bottles and made quite a big mess through various kitchens. But that was really the early years of my experimenting, I suppose, with beer and understanding what craft or crafted beer was all about. During those studies, I had an opportunity to meet some amazing people in brewing. At the end of my course, I was working at Mount Adam. Got offered a job at CUB in Sydney at the Kent Brewery, which funnily enough doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, that was really good times to learn and understand what brewing is all about and just the straight technology of making beer. But having done those wine sort of studies and a real understanding, you know, things don't actually go as planned every single day, you actually start wondering, you know, what else is there with beer? I mean, I brewed beers like VB and Foster's, but there was always something else in there that made me dig a little deeper into beer and brewing. And yeah, tried some pretty great beers since those days. And yeah. So Sanctuary Cove was a great experience. Whilst I was in Sydney, I worked very hard, had a great time, and I think everyone could see that I really did have a love of beer and brewing. I got asked to go from Sydney to Fiji, where Christina and I went to Fiji. I managed the Madocke brewery, and while we were there, we also bought the distillery, so South Pacific Distilleries. So I got to manage a brewery and a distillery, having a wine background. So yeah, that's a kind of pretty cool, a few feathers in the cap. I think Fiji, managing, a whole bunch of Fijians over there was just great fun. Gave you a really nice, grounding into business and running business and managing people, which I probably hadn't really had up until then. But yeah, from Fiji, I got asked to come back straight into Sanctuary Cove, so straight from Fiji into Sanctuary Cove, where the Sanctuary Cove Brewery was built. Sanctuary Cove Brewery became the Gold Coast Brewery, and while we were there, we rebadged that into the Masthead Brewing Company. We brewed beers like Bees Knees, Alpha Pale Ale, Bohemian Pills, beers that went on to be part of what was to become the Matilda Bay portfolio. Pretty much from Sanctuary Cove down into Melbourne, where Jamie and I had met. Jamie put a small team together that was to really bring together what was Matilda Bay Brewing Company and the Masthead Brewing Company. So I was asked to be the head brewer for Matilda Bay. Jamie then went to task to put a team together. We had a guy on the road in every state, and Roscoe was the man on the ground in Queensland.
We had a very detailed 5-year plan. And at that point, we committed, we're actually going to do it. And that started 2 years of planning, very detailed, business plans, marketing plans, trying to find a brewery site, and a whole bunch of different things over that 2-year period.
The conversations happened over many years. We sort of talked about the idea of potentially doing something together for a number of years, but it got to a point where we were just almost sick of talking about it. So we had one of those shit or get off the pot moments where we sat at a cafe in Melbourne and said, right, we're going to get up from this table, we're either going to stop talking about it and never do it, or we're going to commit ourselves to actually doing this.
Yes, it was April Fool's Day 2006. Are we going to do this, or are we just going to keep talking about it? And then we set foot onto bringing to life what is now Stone and Wood.
And that also started 3 years of pain when it came to running a business. So we lost money for 3 years. We had actually budgeted to lose money for that 3-year period. And I think that's part of the success. We all knew what we were in for, and we all signed up for the same thing. So we weren't under any misconception of what it was going to be or could have been. We knew exactly what we were in for, and we just worked to our plan.
Can you put the craft beer industry and the success down to any one thing?
There's a number of things. I think there's a real long-term consumer trends towards diversity in flavour. That's very much in the food and beverage space. So people looking to explore and themselves and try and discover new things. But I think there's also a move in society to people consuming things from small local producers, looking for authenticity in their brands, and personal connections with the products that they buy from and the producers of those products. And I think that's what's really driven the small independent brewers is people love the fact they come in here and they hear the story behind the brand and it's real and it's authentic. It's not just some made-up brand by some global company.
Visceral.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until 2008 when I resigned from CUB to go off, pretty much come up from Melbourne, engineered the brewery, found the site, worked through all the DA process, put the brewery together, and pretty much the rest is history. It's Stone and Wood.
Where did you first brew?
We had a small little shed around the corner, about 500 metres away from here in the back of the industrial estate. It was only a 500 square metre shed. This brew house was the first brew house we bought. So we hadn't brewed a beer at this stage, and we ordered this brew kit, which was pretty big at that time for a brewery to start with this big scale. And once we built that shed around there, and then we just outgrew that shed, which is when we decided to move most of our production to a new place up in Moolumbar. And then after that was up and running, we then turned our attention back on building something like this.
And then to bring it back home and
make it
shiny.
Yeah.
27th of November 2008 was our first beer. Rolling out that brewery into the northern, the rails and the Bangalow Hotel. We can all remember that very first night. I'll never forget it, and I hope I never ever forget that. It was such a memorable night to actually sit there and walking through the pain, of building breweries, putting breweries together, finding finance. Walking through names and some great conversations, having Jamie and Roscoe there, which, really are quite remarkable in their sales marketing ways. I just make stuff.
So did you ever think you'd been in this position?
Look, I guess we set out to build a regional brewing business. We didn't just set out to build a small little craft brewery, we actually set out to build a regional brewing business. So the scale was always in mind from the way we set out. Would it be this complex and would we have big shiny sheds like this? Probably wasn't crystal clear in the vision, but certainly, the idea of a regional business of size was something we had in mind, definitely.
And a regional business of size is exactly what they built.
All that we really wanted to do was to build a sustainable business and be a regional brewer. And we're quite fortunate. A lot of things went our way and we had so much luck.
It seemed like all that pain had brought a whole lot of gain. The sprawling Moolumbar brewery being clear proof of that. And while Pacific Ale may have been the driving force behind this huge facility's development, inside, the high-tech German equipment and its utility was far from reliant on a single recipe. In general, craft beer producers had become well known for providing a much wider range of styles than their beverage industry counterparts. On my inspection of the Stone and Wood canning line, it was being kept busy with their mid-strength garden ale. While listening to the hum of all the whiz-bang equipment, something a little more on the profound side occurred to me. Perhaps, after many years as colleagues, the required trust built between Jamie, Brad and Ross just might have been the main component in the creation of this monolithic site. But this conversation was, however, always going to come back to one beer.
Yeah, the great thing about having a pilot plant here in Byron is it gives our brewers a real opportunity to be creative, try new ingredients, new processes, or just push the boundaries. Great thing about Pacific Ale is it's a big beer of scale, but the brewers have to brew it day in, day out of a Moolumbar, so they come down here and they can escape that repetitive nature of Yeah, exactly.
While we were waiting for the beer to come from Canada, we used the DME brewing equipment. We had a bit of time on our hands. We bought a little amateur brewing kit, a little 50-litre kit, little 50-litre stainless steel fermenter. I had a crack at the first real brew that was back in those days, draft ale, and I can safely sit here, hand on heart, and say that right back from when we started brewing that beer in our shed, right through to today, the formulation, the recipe hasn't really changed at all.
Yeah, look, I think there's probably been other beers that have had just as much impact. The likes of Little Creatures Pale Ale was a significant beer in terms of the evolution of the beer industry. I think it was a beer that was quite out there and challenged a few people, provided a few of those beer epiphanies to people. Pacific Ale probably did the same thing, but maybe to a broader group of people than just the sort of beer-centric beer drinkers. So I think it's probably paved the way in terms of providing other breweries with that gateway into a broader market.
We still use an enormous amount of Galaxy being an amazing hop grown by HBA guys, originally only down in Tasmania, now grown in Tasmania and Victoria. And the flavour that is that hop just bounces out of the glass before you even get it into your mouth, and you can smell it, you can see it, the vibrance and the fluorescence of that beer. Yeah, pretty proud about that one. And yeah, I mean, going all right.
That seemed like a bit of an understatement. There might still be a lot of people who are unaware of how the brand came to be, but I'm pretty sure that most Australians are very familiar with this label. After establishing some of the most important historical context behind the Australian industry's revival, it was time to head back to my home turf and begin looking into the story of one of Queensland's most influential brands, a story that was birthed half a world away. By 2019, Queensland was a hotbed for boutique brewing. But my next interviewee came from territory where craft beer was almost taken for granted, since before a single drop had even touched my lips.
Yeah, I've been brewing since 1986. It's been a passion of mine. It didn't matter if it was one by one to convince everybody to drink craft beer. That is the beautiful sound of cleaning. The first 3 rules of brewing are clean, clean, and clean. The first beer that I ever made at home, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I know it was a dark beer. Although I think we drank it, I don't think it was particularly good. You know, I don't think your first attempt at flying is going to be good either. So my dad, I think, laid out the pathway for me. He was a hobby brewer from the mid-50s. And when I was growing up and I was a little kid in the 70s, he was always telling me, "Oh, Brennan, I used to brew beer." And I think in my head, I was thinking, "Oh, beer, beer, beer." And I think about I was 10 years old, he let me have a sip. I went, "Oh, it's fizzy. It tastes nice. I like it." And he was the kind of guy who he bought a different 6-pack every week. He didn't drink a brand. And so it was always different beers around the house. And I remember him telling me stories about San Francisco and Anchor Steam Brewery. He used to drink that back in 65 or 67 or something like that. And the history of beer always fascinated me. And I think ultimately when I started brewing when I was 19, I took all those things into consideration. The amount of the fascinating things that happened around brewing and refrigeration and transport and cultures being set up around breweries and everything interesting about beer. I just was fascinated about, and that's when I started brewing. Grew up in Waikiki. Beautiful Waikiki, in the water every day. I'd been here visiting, I think, 3 or 4 times from '98. My wife is here from the Gold Coast. We met in Hawaii. Yeah, she was studying her 3rd university degree, which the 3rd one happened to be a Master's of Business, and then we met. I proposed to her after 2 months, and we got married, and then we had a couple of kids. Actually, before the second one came along, I think, we'd already had a brewery by then. Yeah, we had a brewery in 2000 back in Hawaii.
I was in Hawaii and I was still kind of learning just what brewing meant to Brennan. I went to his place, we were going to a party and we were already running a bit late, and I kind of said, come on, let's go. And he pointed to this glass of beer on the table and it was half full, and he said, we'll go in that much kind of thing. And so I just grabbed it and went, done, let's go. And he kind of was like, turns out that was some brown ale that he thought was the best thing he'd ever brewed in his life. He brewed a lot of beer already by then, and that was the last half a glass that he had of that beer, so probably didn't get appreciated as much as what he was going to do, but anyway, we're still together 20-something years later.
The Fieldings have built a brand that has arguably become an Australian craft beer cornerstone, and after the cameras began to roll, it became immediately obvious that this brewing power couple definitely had their own big story to tell.
My sister called me up and she said the laws have changed in Hawaii. Come back to Hawaii.
Like in Queensland, we couldn't give away free beer. Kind of put it to the team, we'll do it. We're willing to do it, but only if you guys are with us. And the resounding feedback was, yeah, let's do it.
Word on the street is that you're the brains of the operation.
I always thought that homebrewing was what you did if you couldn't afford good beer.
Yeah, so this is the chair force. This is where all the important work happens.
There's something there that tells you, where the boundaries are, and I wouldn't let anyone else do it, man. It's pretty hectic.
When I first started Slipstream, when we created the cellar door, I thought we'd get some, half a dozen craft beer nerds in here on a Friday night.
This role it's a blank canvas, there's a lot of possibilities.
Last night and turned it on for the first time, and I've got to say it's pretty impressive. I think it'll do the trick.
The fire came right up to our back fence. Neighbours lost sheds.
One bloke had his visor pretty much melted, so that's hot. You don't deal with that.
And water is the other issue up here. We're in a record-breaking drought, so we're hoping for a decent drop of rain between now and Christmas, so we get the dams half full and we'll be able to give them a drink for the entire season.
Yeah, it's a IPA with a twist. So then I'll have to transfer this over into our software.
Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone's going to be too bothered about that. There'll be painters watching, mate.
Flanders Red took 2 to 3 years to create, so we said we can't recreate it here in the time frame we had, so it came up with a different beer, and that's what we did, the cherry sour.
There's a fine line between losing that closeness to a product and actually being involved in the production of it.
You know how I told you we were growing? I wasn't kidding.
It looks awesome.
It's happening? Yeah. We finally got there.
Yeah, everyone's very excited about it. Obviously, when you first walk in, you see how big the machine is compared to our old machine.
It's an absolutely amazing feeling. It's really exciting. Even if they did a tour 3 years ago and said, oh, you know what? I remember we had such a good time on that. Let's do it again and check out one of their other tours.
More confident that you're going to get it.
Yeah.
The appropriate. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be great. It's going fine.
You just speak through it. There's not like a black spot, or it's a little blemish on the outside of the skin. It doesn't even go under the skin.
Yeah. Got your name written all over it.
That's it. It's a joint effort, mate.
We're from 20 litres of beer to 50. And what we can do it here is just soak the grains in water and make the brewing media before you add yeast.
I mean, eventually the plan is we'll move the brewery down there, so we've sort of almost outgrown this site.
It's the dream. It's like it's a guy having a go, or a couple of guys having a go. They really have a passion, and we're smashing it and smashing ourselves like trying to get it done. But
It's awesome. It's really unique, and there's not many breweries around the whole world doing skate events in the brewery, and so we're one of them.
That process took something like, I think it was the best part of 2 years, a lot of going through council. There was material change of use on the land and things like that to get it all approved.
Putting all the tanks in, hook all the glycol lines up and build the whole
brewery itself, and there's so many aspects and so many things you have to do. So I was here like working 14 hours a day to get it done on that time frame.
Suited us perfectly, so we took these premises, and now we're already realizing it might be too small for us. I'll tell you the whole story.